So yeah, I was hoping to cut down on some of the wild stuff that can and will happen by doing that. So yeah, I'll go ahead and start and give introductions and kind of go around the table. So let's see who we got here. All right, LaKendria, you're first up on my screen right now, so I'll go ahead and just start introducing panelists. First, thank you all for being here. I know everybody has like really busy schedules and things, but you all definitely came out and like showed some community support in trying to create this space. And I really appreciate it on behalf of my students and for myself, because this is the first time I've gotten to be a part of anything like this. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear the conversation and hear about your experiences and really center Black women. So we are here to do that job of centering. We're talking about Black women in higher education, thinking about our experiences, thinking about being in spaces that weren't created for us and are often not accepting of us. So just kind of thinking about the differences of our experiences, impacted by racism and sexism and, class levels and intellectual disconnects and kind of all of these things. So I brought to you panelists who are coming from differing institutions, professions, fields of study, and different levels of higher institution learning. So just kind of looking at this culmination of women, I am really excited to come up and support you all and also watch you support each other. So I really appreciate that. So first, I'm going to introduce LaKendria and let you say your pronouns and your title, what you do. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hello to everyone. I'm LaKendria Kenner. I am a second-year doctoral student at Southern Illinois University. I'm also a graduate assistant, and I work in the field of history. I teach various courses with professors ranging from World History 101 A and B and other low-level history courses. Also, I have a background in radio and television and women and gender studies as well. The first degree I pursued at SIU was radio and television. I then got a master's certificate in women and gender studies. I completed my master's in history in 2019. After that, I was accepted to the PhD program. And so that's my second year in that. I've been at SIU since about 2012.
Thank you. Gabby, you're up next.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Miss Gabby, but my full name is Gabbea Williams. I currently work at McPherson College as the Director of Student Life. I had the pleasure of meeting Aaunterria in a feminism class when we were both attending Southern Illinois University. I also met LaKendria. Hey, LaKendria. I received my master's from Southern Illinois University in higher education. And for my undergraduate work, I attended an HBCU called Lincoln University. My background is in education, women's studies, and overall just human rights. My number one passion is through higher education and mobilizing students to become change agents and world leaders. And so that's a lot of what my work looks like. On another spectrum, I'm happy to be here because I have had the opportunity to present on these same topics on the national level at the National Association of Student Affairs Professionals in Higher Education. And so I'm excited to share my journey and my walk with you all, how I experience higher education as a woman of color, and some things that I have learned and created to help me navigate and, just navigate politics and to stay uplifted and continue shining my light. So I hope that from our conversation today that you are uplifted and that you hear something that sparks an interest in you, and that you just continue on this journey and know that you are here for a reason and you have everything it takes to, to become the person that you are seeking to become. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. Micaela?
Hi everyone. My name is Micaela, she, her, hers. I'm a recent graduate from CSU. I graduated technically summer 2020. And I'm double majored in communications and ethnic studies while I was there. I also was like a part of everything. If it's college life, I did it. I'm a part of a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And while I was at CSU, I was a self-proclaimed anarchist. Just really was rocking the table every chance I got with my fellow peers. And I don't know. Now I've decided to pursue education on a different level, and I'm going to be teaching English in Japan this coming April, actually. So I'm really excited. I don't know how it's going to be. I'm actually like super nervous. But I don't know. I'm I'm learning as it goes, and so that's fun. So um I'm just happy to interact with everyone and engage in dialogue. I love it. I majored in communication, so this is my bread and butter. So I'm just happy to be here and happy to support and just give back to the community that gave me so much. So I love all of y'all already, and I'm just here to uplift as well, and provide some space for good dialogue and maybe insight, and maybe just providing y'all good resume boosters in the future, whatever. So yeah, that's why I'm here. So thank you again.
No problem. Thank you. Atiya?
Hello, I'm Atiya Martin. I attended SIU, Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. There I was able to accomplish my bachelor's degree as well as my master's degree. Following, I was able to enroll in Capella University there for my doctor's degree in social work. So I've got I'm working on my third degree, and it's all in social work. I'm big on social work. I'm big on world peace. We need peace. And right now, as far as my career, I'm the community health worker. And that is basically helping patients connect to resources in the community. That looks like me on a daily, just helping a patient get connected to food nutrition, helping a patient get connected to utility resources, or helping a patient get connected to their doctor or a doctor's appointment, stuff like that. So I'm really, really excited to be able to express my love for what I do and how I accomplish so many goals. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for showing up. Who else you got? Marcela?
Morning, everyone. My name is Marcela, she, her, hers pronouns. I am also a recent graduate of Colorado State University. I did my bachelor's in zoology there. I also, like Mick, was a part of everything and anything, that's not true, everything that gave me joy and gave me energy to do the things that I needed to do. So that's my lesson number one of the day. Only do the things that give you the joy and give you the things that you need to do moving forward. I am now a master's student at the Marshall School of Business at University of Southern California. Switched my letters around a little bit, studying social entrepreneurship. And that's basically how to take the tools of business to change the world and solve social problems. So I am currently the Director of Development and Finance at a nonprofit called Heroes Rise. It's focused on giving young women and girls the skills to develop themselves from the inside, developing the inner girl so that they can use their voices. And I'm also just finished filing my LLC with the state of California to co-produce a documentary focused on some of the gaps in social work. So I am all about telling stories and giving light to voices that aren't often heard. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much. I'm also a member, proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Thank you, thank you. Tiya?
Hi, my name is Tiya. She, her pronouns. I am a social worker. I'm an LCSW in the state of Tennessee. I literally know no one here in real life at all, actually. I'm fairly certain Aaunterria found me on chance because I'm really, really good friends, best friends with somebody that she knows from back in the day. But I am a social worker. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a therapist. I own my own private practice here in Tennessee, and I am currently enrolled at the DSW program with the through the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and I'm really enjoying that. I'm here because Black women need platforms for things. Also, I think I kind of dig doing panelist work just in general. And because it was probably meant to be, because when I tell you I am busy, I am busy. And the date that Aaunterria sent to me, I hope I'm saying your name right, because again, I never met you in real life, I'm just reading. The date that she sent to me would actually happen to be a day that I took off of work. So I assume that I'm meant to be here for something. I don't know just yet. But I'm here. I love social work. I love education. What I don't love is gatekeeping and professionalism, though. Like, I am very much adamantly against it. So at all points when I can kind of knock those things out of the way, I try to do that. And that's mainly because it's just white people in. I mean, I don't really know another way to say it. Me dressing like this takes nothing away from my ability to be a therapist. So like, that's one of the things that I'm adamantly, you know what I'm saying, against. Like, be clean, maybe don't smell, but other than that, like, be yourself. So I really want people to be out here to be themselves, especially Black women, because that's the only way therapy is going to really work anyway.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Corey?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Corey. I go by, so I don't identify as a woman. I identify as non-binary. I go by they, them, theirs. I am an adjunct professor at Colorado State University in the Women's Studies department. I also teach Africana Studies at the University of Northern Colorado as well. And I've actually been with CSU for around 9 years at this point. So I've kind of been able to experience it both as a student and as a faculty. So I would love to share some of my insight about what it means to kind of navigate these spaces, some of the behind the scenes stuff that as students, we don't really get to see.
Yeah, thank you very much. Panelists, other panelists, I try to make sure that everybody knows about preferred pronouns and kind of how everyone wants to be preferred. So I do want to make sure that we are abiding by proper pronoun usage and also by proper racial or ethnic identifier. And Tiya specifically, I know is Black, not a woman of color, not any of those things. She specifically wants to be identified as Black. So also just to reiterate that. And as I said before, I kind of want to be able to go through this to where everybody gets to answer their questions or have their questions answered. So do make sure that if you are only attending today's panel and you are one of the students from Black Feminisms 411, make sure that you are planning to ask your questions closer to the front of the line so that they do have a chance to engage with your questions. So I'll go by hand raising measures to see who would like to start our conversation off and really start to engage panelists.
Hi, can y'all hear me? Okay, great. I think for some reason I can't hear y'all all of a sudden. So could someone say something real quick just so I can make sure?
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, I can hear you. I don't know what happened, but okay, we're good. Hi, my name is Marley. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I am a junior at CSU, and I'm studying women and gender studies and ethnic studies. And I'm gonna hit the ball here and say, this is my question for all of you, is that has your experience in higher education reinforced any feelings of subordination? And if so, in what ways did that show up for you?
Aaunterria, I can see you speaking, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was calling on you, but I couldn't find my icon. So yeah,
Cool,
go
cool,
ahead.
cool. Awesome. I am gonna start by not disagreeing, but presenting my kind of perspective on the question. I think it's a great question. I came from and come from a very privileged background. I went to a really, really small private all-girls school on the west side of LA, lots of money. That space, again, going from a really small white space to a really big white space that was CSU was a very interesting journey. However, I think that part of that journey is who made me such the strong leader that I am. I definitely, I'm not going to say that I would redo some of the things. And obviously I wish some of the shit didn't suck as much as it did. But I think that having to deal with all of that made me who I am. It made me the leader that I am. It made me find my voice in the way that I use it and share it now. So yes, I understand your question and kind of where you're coming from of like, oh shit, like that stupid white man professor like made me feel like shit today. And I now in the space and now in grad school at another private white institution find myself a lot more capable to push back on those things and a lot more confident in who I am and in my voice in those spaces now. And so yes, I hope that answers your question just a little bit.
Tiya?
Actually, I think I'm sorry, I heard Micaela and then I heard you say it correctly,
I think
but
it's
I am
Micaela.
fairly certain Micaela's hand was up before mine.
Okay, go ahead, Micaela.
You are so sweet. Thank you. I don't even know how to use this because I'm on my phone. And so I don't even know how this is working and I'm clicking things. So thank you. I really appreciate you being so courteous. I can speak a little bit to this because like I said, I've done everything in college. I did Air Force ROTC for 3 years at CSU and literally was the most traumatic thing I've ever done in my life because just like Marcela was saying, it's this big white space. But then I was part of this subculture that already people don't know what the heck is going on and why we do what we do. And I'm a woman of color, I'm a Black woman. And what does that mean? And so I was always good at ROTC. I did ROTC in high school and it was something I was really passionate about. I liked being in leadership positions. And that was the first time I felt like I was incompetent. And it was because of white men telling me I was incompetent or putting me on the spot and telling me I was wrong and then coming back later and being like, oh yeah, you were right. But it wouldn't be in front of everyone, right? It would just be like with the two of us happening to talk. And so it felt very isolated because even my friends, like they were like, girl, like, why don't you just quit? And I was kind of like, I don't really know what I'm going to do if I quit. So I was really just sticking in with like the BS just because I was scared of starting over and basically quitting. I felt like a quitter if I left that space, not succeeding. And so I kind of had this internal struggle of being at peace with saying this is enough, and I was okay with that. And I honestly just flourished after that. It was just an uphill slope from there. And so I don't regret anything, but that experience definitely for me as walking in that space of CSU definitely made me feel subordinate the first maybe 1.5 years I was at CSU. Then there just became I don't give a F type of attitude just because they were going to hate me regardless. So I was just going to be me. And I was just like, this don't make no sense because I would never switch up any other place. And why am I switching up for these white people? So I kind of just like clicked. Like I talked to my stepdad and he's like, for real, like, do you know who you are, right? And I was like, yeah, you're right. So after that kind of just catapulted my confidence to kind of quit. And so that was kind of my bravest thing I did in college. I feel like my first catapulting to braver things. And so I'm still really proud of myself for saying enough is enough for that because it was funny because I stayed in their mouth after I left. Like they stayed talking about me. I was like, man, y'all must have loved hating on me because that was crazy. I thought I was cool with these people. So I don't know. It's definitely a different weird dynamic because I'm a real person. And so when I show up, I'm me. Just like we were talking about, like that professionalism, gatekeeping. I don't do that. So I'm me everywhere I go. And so when I was in uniform, I was me, and people would put me to the side. You know, you're acting a little too what? Say something. I wish you would because I'm recording this. Like, you know, like kind of stuff. So that's who I am. And so being like that, and that my light trying to be like minimized really hurt me. And so when I figured out I had to get out of that, it was beautiful.
Thank you. Tiya.
Okay, so the quote, good news is I actually never really dealt with that when I was in college. I went to the Florida State University for undergraduate and graduate school. However, I was a member of the Marching 100. It's a long story, but long story short, Black people used to not be able to be in the band. So it was a loophole that allowed us to be in the band at FAMU. And then it got changed into something else. So I still got to be in this marching band at FAMU, which is a HBCU for those of you guys who are not familiar. So basically, I went to Florida State to go to class, especially in undergrad. So I would do my classes, but every activity that I participated in, all of my friends, they all came from FAMU. So I was immersed in Blackness, real Blackness, just all the time. And I just didn't have to deal with some of those particular dynamics. When I got to graduate school, I was again somewhat insulated from those particular concerns because I got my master's in social work. And you know, we got our issues, but we do a little better than some of these other fields. You know, we've been inclusive for a while, and at least my program at my school was a really, really good program. So I recognize that I was lucky, if that makes sense. I know this shit exists. I saw other people go through it. It just wasn't my personal experience.
Okay, thank you. Lakendria?
Yeah, you know, since I'm in history, this is a constant thing for me. You get these reading lists, you have to take these seminars and colloquiums, and you'll read a book every week. You know, you'll have a reading list that's got, you know, maybe 15 books on it. And if any of those books are by somebody Black, it's never really a Black woman. They might put a Black man in there. They might, you know, put a couple of white women in there. But it's typically a list of, you know, straight white males. And they're probably also old. So you get handed these books where, you know, these are the foremost scholars in this area. And, you know, the material is racist. You know, it comes off as racist, very paternalistic. It subsumes the Black experience under this banner of all things American. And, you know, if you consider Black people who actually existed at these points in time, you know, wherever these narratives we read take place, to consider Black people, these authors' arguments and, you know, their methods and their theories, they just really don't hold any weight. They're, again, like I said, not even in touch with reality. So I'm always having to come to class and say, you know, this is a bunch of bullshit. You know, here's why. You know, you can't, for example, one of the most world-renowned historians that we were forced to read is Benedict Anderson. I had to read this dude 2 times, you know, and Benedict Anderson, you know, thought he could say things like racism is just, you know, rooted in dreams of class, not, you know, society or America. And, you know, just saying things like this. He wants to write about the patriotism in America at the World War II period. And this is when Black people were doing the Double V campaign and they were suffering segregation in the ranks of the military that they served. And, you know, so I have to always come to class and say, you know, this is offensive. And you made me pay for this. You made me pay to support the person that would, you know, put this out there. And then the thing that really is the fact that if I didn't know anything about my own history, I'd be none the wiser. And for years, I sounded like a damn fool because I was going around, telling this grand narrative of America that, they instill in you to make you patriotic and everything, and I'm really acting in a way that's not in my own best interest, to perpetuate these things that they're saying. And when I object to doing things or reading a narrative that is not in my own best interest to read, that excludes me, that if I were considered is not even true, it's a fallacy at best, when I object to that and I'm told that I can't live in this bubble, we are living in the bubble, and the bubble is old white man's bullshit. This is the bubble we can't get out of. But as soon as you ask to read something different, you're told that you only want to learn about Black things, when what I'm trying to tell you is all I've ever learned about is white things. And I had to do more work than everybody else because I had to go back and learn everything that pertained to me in my free time. I don't even get a foundation for anything that pertains to my interests when I sit down to write a dissertation because everything was white. You know what I'm saying? And when you object, there's something your oppressor can teach you. These microaggressions, these racist texts, they're a difference of opinion. These authors were men of their time. White historians like to, talk against moralization in history. No, if something's wrong, we need to call it what it is. And I don't think a difference of opinion is can be excused. Racism and difference of opinion are not the same thing. And so it's I'm just good. You get it. You get it.
Thank you for that. Corey?
So I kind of wanted to touch on a point that was made a little bit earlier about, especially in these white institutions, sometimes we're able to find these spaces where we can live our truth, speak our truth, be seen, be kind of held by some kind of sense of community. I think Tiya was talking about this. And for me at CSU, it's a very white, not only a very white university, but the city I think is like 93% white. So it's a very white space. And this is one of those sundown towns for those of you who don't know. Big KKK presence here historically, but I was in the ethnic studies and women's studies departments, and for me those were those spaces. In women's studies, for example, we're having the same types of conversations. This isn't a white feminism type of space, right? We talk about race, we talk about disability. We're really getting into things just as we would in ethnic studies, which is why those departments are kind of married together, right? They kind of have this interconnected relationship. So I did my bachelor's, my master's there. And as I got into graduate school, when we're getting into graduate school, there are even less people of color than there were when we were in our, bachelor's programs and things like that. And even in these ethnic studies programs and women's studies programs, there was this expectation to cater to whiteness that was still showing up. Obviously as professors, we absolutely have control over the spaces and how we facilitate these spaces. And we have every right to check people, call people in when they're being harmful, when they're being problematic, but that kind of stuff wasn't happening. A lot of white violence, which I'm sure you're all probably already familiar with from firsthand experience, and no system of check. And this is what we do, right? This is the work we say that we're doing, and we're not doing it. So even then, as I'm coming into my role as a professor and having the opportunity to control how I facilitate the space and trying to make it a more inclusive environment, and still needing to kind of check the white violence, what ends up happening is, I have the freedom to speak my truth, but that's not the freedom from, I don't want to say consequences, but from white violence, essentially. So what ends up happening is, white students see us as aggressive, we're violent, we're dangerous. I've literally had students go to the president, to the dean of the students, to my department chair and say, this person is throwing things, screaming, yelling, because we're always aggressive, right? We're always violent. We're always a threat to people's physical safety. And rather than the departments and the deans, the colleges giving us support and things, we always have to then kind of prove that we are adequate in our role. You know, we are intelligent. We do have the knowledge. It's not opinion, right? It's not a matter of opinion. This is knowledge, this is information. These are our histories and how we've made sense of our histories, and it's valid. But we have to defend our intellect. We have to defend our ability to prove that we are competent in our job, because we're already seen as incompetent in our ability to do our job. And we have to respond to these very ludicrous claims made by students, right? Where we do all of this extra work just to prove that we are adequate in the jobs that we're doing, that we're not causing harm to white students. It's never our students of color that are getting that kind of support, but for white students. And just as a really quick example, you know, as I said, we don't do white feminism here, but white students, it's a white university, they come in with that expectation, and we shut that down. You need to be intersectional. It doesn't happen, you fail. So I had a student fail the class every step of the way. You were not being intersectional, you were doing white feminism. That's not acceptable. They got the F. But I had to put together a 12-page set of responses to each claim that that white student made, just to prove that I was doing my job accurately and that they got the grade they deserved, right? Rather than needing to get this kind of grade change. And even after doing all of that work, the department chair and the dean of students said, sign this paper and allow the student to drop this F from their transcript. So that kind of stuff is actually very common. In a lot of cases, we're told just accommodate the white students. You know, it's a lot less trouble for us. Do what you can to protect yourself, because we're not going to protect you. So in that way, even as you're able to kind of speak your truth, live your truth, you face those kind of repercussions, because we are meant to accommodate the white violence on a everyday basis.
Thank you. I feel like I can definitely also, as coming into my professor role, definitely feeling some of that, that pushback, or some of that, like, I don't know, weird space of like, what do we do with the Black woman in front of the room who's like now the teacher, who now has some sort of power, who is now able to have that space and voice and all of that, and not have things that I'm saying be taken as aggression, or saying that like I'm yelling, or specifically, I had students write in my evaluations that I hate white people. Right, that like I hate white people specifically because we talked about white privilege, and we talked about like the ways in which, you know, race is a thing, right? Like this is a thing that we're constantly dealing with, and students don't want to hear that, and they especially don't want to hear that from somebody who looks like me. So yeah, I feel all of that. Tiya, did you have something else for this question?
Yeah, this is gonna sound so silly, but like I forgot that I'm in school right now. And I really only thought about like my previous school experience. One thing that is very interesting, and I am very grateful for this, but it feels weird. I cannot speak for the whole school because my program is virtual and I haven't stepped foot on campus. But UT's College of Social Work, like, yo, they on point with the shit. First class, right away, we reading about critical race theory. It's stuff in the syllabus saying, this is what we're gonna tolerate. This is what we're not gonna tolerate. I don't wanna hear no nonsense. I don't wanna hear no bullshit. Everything that we've done in every single class has been, how could race affect this? How can gender affect this? How can class affect this? Even when it comes down to diagnosing, and they're so good that it feels weird. And I know it feels weird because it's not the norm, and it's not necessarily the what, you know what I'm saying, we're used to having. And so again, I cannot speak for the whole school. I can't even speak for any other college. I've only done it on the internet through Zoom, but they are doing what I think needs to be done. And I think that there's still more work that needs to be done. I haven't had a Black teacher yet, and I'm on class number 4, excuse me. But
Thank you. Marcela?
Yeah, I hope you don't mind, Aaunterria, but I was kind of thinking about another question that was asked and how it can vary a lot in the different spaces, right? And so I had mentioned that I was in the science space at CSU and how the perception of race and the different stuff that I had to deal with in terms of violence and othering and silencing was very different than now my space in the business school in the business world and what that looks like, and being in a more white feminine space and then now being in a very white male space has been a huge transition for me. And I was just thinking about that a lot as folks were talking, right? And so the different spaces, the different departments, the different areas of study are all like different types of violence. And so learning how to navigate that in higher education is toxic as hell. Toxic as hell. Mick and I talk about it all the time in dealing with how do we talk to this professor and email this dean, and how do you advocate for yourself? How you advocate for yourself in a virtual space is very different than how you have to advocate for yourself in person. And so I'm just thinking about that. That's sitting with me really heavy right now because I just got off the phone. I'm a TA in one of the classes in a different department than my own. And they're having a lot of issues with a very overbearing, borderline rude, borderline inappropriate professor who's constantly shooting down a Black woman in my class. And I'm like, yo, I don't like this. I don't know how I feel about it. And so I had a one-on-one conversation with her of how can I support you? How can we talk to this professor? How can we handle this through the things that we need to handle it through? Because it's not okay. And so learning how to navigate those different spaces comes up. It's very different, obviously, in the different departments and stuff, but it's also very different in the virtual space. So I was thinking about that kind of heavy as I was listening to other panelists.
Thank you. LaKendria, did you have something else?
No, I think my face button is just there. Do I click it or something and get it to disappear?
I think if you just
there's a lower raise. I mean, not lower raise, a lower hand.
All right, I'll go ahead and defer to students to have anybody else who's prepared to ask their question. Zoe?
Yeah, so this brought up a lot of interesting things, this conversation so far. But my question has kind of been answered a little bit by some of the panelists, but I was wondering, going into higher education, as Black people, were you expecting more or less racism within this space and these typically white spaces that are, you know, CSU, and I don't know about Southern Illinois, what that would look like. But I was wondering, was what you were expecting, was that different than what you had experienced in higher education?
Micaela?
Okay, cool. There was no accidents this time. Good. Well, I'm originally from Texas. I'm from a small place called Lubbock, Texas. If you know what Texas Tech is, that's where I'm from. So we're known for cotton and manure. So like I'm really from like the sticks. And so I've lived in Colorado for a really long time. And so I've gotten used to like living here. But even where I live is socioeconomically like a lot poorer than what Colorado Springs is known for. And that's where I reside right now. And so like even like the high school I went to, like it's known as like the ghetto school and like things like that. But like literally we have, like I graduated with a 4.7 GPA from my high school. So when they talk about it, they're just saying all the Black kids go there or all the poor Black kids go there. That's like what they're trying to say. And like it showed majoring in communications, it's interesting me going back and thinking about these issues and seeing the nonverbal violence that was happening and how it even affected me in that space. So like even thinking of that place, I loved it. I grew so much in that space. And then thinking about how I transitioned to CSU, it was a complete culture shock to me. Even though I had seen white violence even perpetuated in that school, it was still Black like beauty. It was Black, like literally what I think of when we say like the Black imagination, like the Black imaginary, like this idea of like a common space for Black education, a space that is devoted for the students and giving them that the resources to be better and do better. And so when I got to CSU, I was like, whoa. And like, I'm a first gen student, period. So I don't know anyone in my family who's gone to college except for my siblings and me. And so like, I was the first like go. And so I was like, oh shoot, like this is scary as hell. And like, even like Ram Welcome Weekend, I didn't do none of the stuff. Like the RAs be like banging on the door. I didn't do none of that stuff with the hall. I was with my parents. Like literally, I was scared to leave because I was like, I don't know if I can do this. This is white, mama. This is white. This is mayonnaise white. Like, this is white. And she was just like, no, it's okay. It's okay. Like, it's good here. And so, like, I remember one of the first places we went was the back office. And I love the back office for so many reasons. And even to this day, like, it's still like a space I think of when I think of some of like my best moments at the school. And so, I don't know. It was definitely, I didn't expect it. I didn't expect half of the things that happened to me to happen, to be honest with you. I didn't expect to deal with all this stuff. I lived in Newsom for the first 2 years. So when the news happened in Newsom, I was there. There was just so much that happened. And I was literally there. And I was like, I don't know. I empathize now as I grow older with James Baldwin and his readings, because I think that's kind of how his experience with the civil rights movement was, like an onlooker that happened to just be there at the right place at the right time and know these people. And so when I read his stuff, I kind of like empathize with him a lot, because I'm like, it's kind of just, you catapult yourself into history. And like, I didn't know I was going to be a part of any of these things, or, you know, things that today like are huge spectacles that are thought of in the community. And so I don't know, it's cool to think about just how crazy those 4 years were for me, and how many emotions I went through, and the people I've gotten to meet and engage with. But I also, like was previously said, I don't regret it at all. I wouldn't do it any differently. I don't even think if I had control of it, anything would have been different, to be honest with you. So it was definitely, I think this is just the spirit of who I am, to be in the front of everything, to be loud and to be boisterous and to be standing up for others. And so I just happened to be someone who had good leadership abilities and was able to experience it differently than I think a lot of other people did in higher ed, especially as a Black woman. And so I don't know, I really took advantage of it, but definitely still healing from it. That's why I'm going to go to Japan, because I can't be here anymore. I can't even be in the same city as like, I can't be anywhere near it. So that's why I got to leave. So I'm definitely ready to like really heal and understand what that means, and also teach while healing and go through that journey. So
thank you. Gabby?
Y'all, so I'm gonna be like looking back and forth because I have y'all on one screen, but this is the one with the audio. So yeah, I want to talk about this question because, as I mentioned before, I did attend an HBCU, and then I went to SIU for my grad work. And so one thing that I noticed was a bit of culture shock as well. Coming from an HBCU where your Blackness and your culture is elevated and celebrated, and you are given spaces to operate in your culture that is teaching you the value of your ancestors' contributions to this country, and how you can also create those same spaces for yourself as a social change agent and a future world leader. I went from that space to feeling very proud about who I was as a Black woman, to going to a PWI where a lot of that was minimized and silenced. And that's just my experience, because I know we have other people from SIU on this call, so that's just my experience. But that transition from HBCU to PWI, I noticed a theme. At SIU when we would hold spaces for Black students, and those spaces, whether it was in academia or, at a program on campus, those spaces would always center the sorrow of Black culture. We would always, bring people together to talk about, what's wrong and how we shall overcome and things like that. And we need those spaces, but also, where were the spaces where we were able to celebrate our contributions, where we were able to talk about the people who did uproot these systems, so people that look like you and I can walk these halls and walk these sidewalks and pavements of these colleges. And I had that at a HBCU, but when I got to SIU, I noticed that thing, that when we would come together, it was always that space. And even in class, I remember this very vividly. I had a professor who, just slapped Black history on our syllabus, just, to check a box. And when we began the conversation about Black history in class, I literally became emotional, because the one time you want to talk about my culture, you're problematizing it. You're talking down on it, and you're talking about how sorrowful and sad it is, and how, you know, we literally come from this struggle. And I'm like, I know that piece because I have that walk of my life, but that's not all who I am. And that's not a reflection of who my culture is. We're not just this helpless people. We're not just this powerless people who, you know, we're just beggars and slaves and things like that. And so I literally became emotional in class, which I never do. And he paused and he says, tell me why you became emotional. And I said, because you had this opportunity to celebrate my culture and you chose not to. And I said, that's a problem to me, because I see this thing a lot at this school. You know, when we do have these opportunities to come together, it's always, we're discussing the issue, we're not discussing the solutions and the power that we have. And that will carry over into the students who see this as well, because when they get into the workplace, they're not going to know how to advocate for themselves, because you've already told them that they're helpless. They're not going to know how to navigate workplace politics, because they've never seen the people who have done it in our culture. And I have a problem with that. And so his solution to that was, you know, we had a follow-up meeting in the next semester. He rearranged his syllabus. And he included more writings and more books and more authors on the other side, the other spectrum of our culture. Because let's be honest, a lot of the things that we have today, Black people contributed to that. We all know that. So let's talk about that. So I'm very intentional about, you know, challenging those systems. I've always been like that. Even when I was in elementary, I literally got suspended because I had school board, or our principal, she would come around while we were taking the state board test, and she tried to make me change my answer. And I knew Sister Girl was wrong. And I told her that, and she suspended me. So baby, I've always challenged the system. And I don't know where I learned that from. Maybe it's in my DNA, but one thing you won't do is you won't make my Blackness a problem. If you can't celebrate me, don't talk to me. I digress.
Thank you for that. Tiya?
So again, very thankful for my own personal experiences. I grew up immersed in Blackness. My town was all Black. I did not go to school with white people at all until I was in the 9th grade, and that was a whole culture shock. And that was, I'll talk about that in a second. But I grew up enriched in Blackness. My town was mostly Black with some Hispanic, but Black was the focus. We had Kwanzaa plays at school. I've known all 3 verses of Lift Every Voice and Sing since I was in like 2nd grade. We would sing it every morning. We did plays about Africa. We talked about pyramids and all of this kind of stuff. And this is what I learned from when I was a very young child. So it was always ingrained in me that, you know, Black is dope. Like Black is where it's at. Like, yes, we got our struggles and things that we have been through, but we've also done, you know, a lot of things. Pulled me out of public school because I was wasting my potential, essentially, and she put me in Catholic school at 9th grade. And that was actually my culture shock, because there I was in school with white people. And there were lots of microaggressions and stuff at the time that I didn't even realize were microaggressions until I got older, and things like that. Like I remember one time in class, you know, talking about putting on lotion because, you know, something about being ashy. And they were like, what's that? Like, and I'm like, okay, you might not get ashy, but you know what ashy is. Like, don't play with me. But again, I was young, I was youthful, and I did not have much experience with white people. So I didn't even realize that it was shade, because again, Blackness was always great. So I had that one experience in Catholic school. My mama realized she cannot afford to send 7 kids to Catholic school, and we moved, and I was in Black schools again. And so by the time I got around to college, because of the experience that I had in 9th grade, I was mentally prepared for what it was that was going to be ahead of me. And I did what I naturally do, and that was find the Black spaces and just hang out in there. And like, my classes in undergraduate were so large, like I couldn't even tell you who was in my class. But I know everybody in the band, and I went to all the Black history things and stuff at FAMU. So again, I'm really thankful and appreciative of the fact that I got to be immersed in so much Blackness throughout my life. And I hope that other people get to have that for their future.
Thank you. Lakendria?
I also went to SIU, and you know, I'm from Carbondale, and I lived on the northeast side of town, and there just wasn't a lot of white people. And I think that, you know, you don't have the language to describe a lot of the things that you feel are off, that aren't right. But as a kid, you know, you go to school, you might have some white people at school, but you go home, and you're just around Black people, and you don't even think about these types of things. You know, you grow up, you get your little job at a restaurant or a retail space. You know, you work with white people, you go home, you live on the poor side of town, you live around nothing but Black people. So, and then, you know, racism can be kind of covert. It can appear covert in Carbondale when you don't know about it, when you don't know how white supremacy works, when you don't know how institutionalized racism is functioning, when you don't even know what a microaggression is, because most of my life I didn't, you know. So I think I was more oblivious than anything. And I think becoming educated and, you know, the internet, just having like-minded people, being in a space where I was beginning to learn more of my history on Facebook than I was in school, you know, these pages, you know, just interacting with people like Aaunterria who might post facts and things that you just aren't aware of, that you can read more and research. You know, one of the books that changed my life, in fact, I have it right here. It's one of my favorite books. It's called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It was written by a man named Paulo Freire. I found out about this book from Charity Croft on Facebook, you know, but you find out about these things and then you become aware. And I was going to college right on the cusp of this. So even though I'm 36 years old and I'm from here, it was a culture shock. And you know, the racism got blatant. I don't know if anybody else who went to SIU remembers, but remember those flyers that were going around, being put under the windshield wiper of people's cars. It's okay to be white. Recruiting Klan members right here on campus. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, they'll tell you that that is a difference of opinion, and that these people, this white violence, you know, is freedom of speech. This is what they were trying to convince us of. You know, I don't know if anybody else was there, but I will never forget that. When Trump got elected, you know, there was a lot of like big, scary trucks with huge tires, you know, with the really loud engines with these flags, and it just really put out a lynchy vibe. And you're on edge. You're seeing all these white boys riding around on the backs of trucks with flags, hooting and hollering and all these Trump signs. And the first thing I'm thinking is, oh, hell no. You know, you don't, I mean, you know, it looked really lynchy. Like that's all I can call it. Then we had the incident where the movie, A Bug's Life, it's something about bugs. One of those animated movies, you know, they do this voiceover. And, you know, they start talking about niggers in the video, and it's circulating around campus, you know, and I just had never been subjected to this level of, because I was around, you know, Black people. You didn't get into political discussions, who got elected, you know, whose history is more important, who's excluded. You didn't get into these type of discussions usually at work, especially not if you're working retail or fast food. So I was just kind of like, what? You know, just taken back. So then this video comes out, and there's, again, nobody knows who did it. Nobody can do it. I don't know if these people were even expelled, because they were making a case for these people's free speech. And then you had the incident with the cheerleaders that were kneeling. You know, they were going to honor them at breakfast. The NAACP was going to honor them. I ended up writing about this in my thesis, actually. You know, I followed the social media posts, the comments that SIU alumni and current students I mean, it really is unnerving to see the type of racist things they were saying online. And I've documented this, and it literally is in my thesis. This actual conversation at the school where I pay my tuition to attend, you know, people being way out of line, you know, but these three girls, women, they were, you know, told that they were going to have to stay in the locker room during the anthem if they were going to kneel. They were penalized, and the whole SIU racist community just came out in droves. And I really had not seen this type of thing going on before. And so, yeah, it was a really big culture shock. And again, all you can think of is, one, am I safe? Two, I'm paying my tuition to be subjected to this bullshit. And three, how is racism a difference of opinion or free speech? But yeah, it's pretty much my take.
Thank you for that. Atiya, I know you're having problems raising your hand if you want to answer.
Thank you. So for my experience, my safe place was SIU social work department. There, I was able to get that hand up because I come from a low income background. So I was able to get that hand up to actually climb in society. So, but on the other hand, my education as far as like high school and below, that really, in Southern Illinois, that really damaged me. I didn't see a future. I didn't see me going to college. I didn't see SIU. I didn't see that hope. So for me, my elementary education was horrible. I actually experienced segregation in first grade. Didn't know what it was until I actually learned about it in other grades. So my experience is definitely a turnaround. SIU social work department is magnificent because I couldn't see, like I said, I couldn't see a future in Southern Illinois.
Thank you. Gabby, do you still have your hand up or do you have something else for me?
No, I need to put it down.
Okay, I will go ahead and ask Angel, because I did see your hand up for your questions.
Yeah, so my major is journalism and media communications, and some of you have talked about how kind of like being alone, and there's some times in my major where I feel alone and I don't know how I need to stay positive and how to get through it. So I was going to ask you all, how do you stay positive and uplift yourself?
Sorry, Tiya?
Number one, by surrounding myself with things that I define to be supportive. And even if I can't find it at the school or the place that I'm in, like my social networks, my online communities, again, like they're drenched in Blackness, like just all the time. And that's just what I surround myself with, because that's what feels good to me, and that allows me to be in some of these other spaces and it be, you know what I'm saying, not that big of a deal. I'm able to filter out a lot of the stuff that happens around me because I'm self-employed. I work for myself, and my employees are my beautiful Black friends who I love and adore. And so it's creating those spaces for yourself that you have that are safe and secure, so that when I do have to go out into the world, when I do have to interact with other people, you know what I'm saying, like it doesn't sting as bad because I'm not constantly being stung and attacked all the time. That's the best way that I can think to say it. Not that it's not a big deal, not that it doesn't hurt, but it's a lot easier for me to brush stuff off of my shoulder because like I'm just, oh, my people they are top notch. And the few white people that I do have in my close circle are people that above and beyond, I know will happily lay down their lives for me, you know what I'm saying? And they are doing what it is that they're supposed to be doing as far as confronting racism and being real, true allies. And I hate that word, but I do know like 4.
Thank you. Marcela?
I love that. I was like, I also like have issues with allies, but I also know about like 4 people who I know are like my, sorry. Anyway, that was great. I wanted to bring a couple of intersections into the space, if you will. Like I mentioned, I came from a super small private white school, but I also grew up in LA. And so it was definitely almost like a reverse culture shock for me coming to Colorado in general, Fort Collins in general, let alone dealing with campus. Like I knew that I was going to a campus with 35,000 people, but I didn't really know what 35,000 people was, especially when 70% of them are white. That was terrifying. And the first time I went into BAC with the Black and African American Cultural Center at CSU, that was also the first time I'd been in a room with that many Black people, like ever in my entire life, outside of like my family. And so being a multiracial individual, dealing with imposter syndrome on the school side, dealing with the am I Black enough on the other side, all of that is really difficult. And one of the things that I found for me was finding the different people in different spaces to give you energy. And so the spaces are important, but the people are even more important. I also identify as queer. And so I found a really awesome queer community at CSU. And so even though it wasn't necessarily the Pride Center, I had a lot of people in the Pride Center that were with me. I identify as disabled, and in the student disability services offices, I had those people who were for me. In zoology, I had those people. And so that was kind of like not my coping, but that was one of the tools that I used, is I was able to identify people and keep those relationships with people to maintain my energy. I'm looking at different folks that are also in the audience, and I've worked with them. And one of the biggest things for me was mentoring students. And so being able to learn as I go and then also help folks as they go. And I always told them, like, I don't know everything, but we can figure it out. Like I probably said that sentence more times in my life in the past 4 years of, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how to fix this, but your safety is important, your energy is important, and you are important. And so we're going to do what we have to do to make sure that you have the different resources, find the different people to make sure that you feel safe, that you feel valued, that you feel confident in yourself to do what you need to do, because you're here to get a degree, and we're going to make sure that that happens in whatever way, shape, or form you want to see that happen. And so yeah, I just wanted to bring some different identities into the space too, because we're more than just Black. Like I wear my Blackness on me all times, but we're more than Black. We're more than all of our identities, and we're learning how to really own your own identity is really difficult. And so I think that when you find those different people in those different spaces to help you on that journey, it means the world. And that was definitely the reason that I was able to succeed at CSU. And I say that with a lot of pride. Like, I succeeded at CSU. I did more than just to get a degree. I was able to help people. I was able to push for change. I was able to help people. I was able to do all these things that I set out to do. And it was because of the other people that I was able to build up, surround myself with, because they're the ones that are going to help lift you.
Thank you. Micaela?
So when I was at CSU, I don't know, I kind of built a lot of unconventional relationships with everyone. I'm kind of just known for that in my life. Like I can be friends with anyone. Like I click really well with a lot of people, and I network good. So like it was kind of just easy for me to like kind of feel the vibes of people, like the energies, like, you ain't for me. Okay, let's keep going. Like professors, even just things like that. Like I knew early on who were the professors that were going to challenge me to think outside of what I thought. I knew my professors that were going to want better from me. And so I kind of leaned on a lot of those professors, and like got coffee or met outside of school to kind of just like getting good with them, because I think I ended up in a lot of ways teaching a lot of professors what they need to do, especially like even like Black professors, like what they need to do to cater to their Black students in these classes, and like what that looks like as a whole, without looking like favoritism. And so like I don't know, it was just interesting because even in my capstone, I took family communication for my capstone. And so like I love family. And now taking that, it's like literally was like taking the red pill in the Matrix, because now everything in my house, I'm like, oh God, I know exactly what this is. This is something's about to happen. We're digressing in our discourse and communication and just using all these functional words. I'm like trying to get out of my academia mind when it comes to stuff like that. But like, even just like those professors that I had for my capstones, like Dr. Kavanaugh in Ethnic Studies Department, Dr. Sabbath in the Communications Department, like those were people that like I really leaned on, because I could tell like they weren't finna let students of color, but Black students especially, feel any type of way in that space. And during the time specifically I'm talking about, like my senior year, is when like we had the blackface incident. And so like when I think about that, like I think about how much of like that was just a talking point and how triggering that was. Like, I don't want to talk about this all the time. Like, I don't want to talk about these white people up in Corbett acting a fool. I don't want to do that all the time. And so majoring in the communications department, like knowing that people were hearing a lot of Black students like saying that, it made us really feel heard, I think. And I think the only reason that even happened was because like we spoke up. And so I don't know, just finding those people, like was already said prior, like finding those people, like your friends, your peers to support you. But like most importantly, I think like finding the professionals in your department or outside of your department, and creating just like networking and relationships. I don't even want to call it networking, because at its core it's relationship building. And so like creating those bonds are astronomically important. And like I really think even like when I worked in Aggie Village, like I was super close with everyone that was a director, and it was super important to me that I was, because there's a lot of Black students that live at Aggie Village, especially football players, people from other marginalized backgrounds who aren't getting catered to by our facilities. So what does that look like? Why do we need to fix it? What needs to happen? And so like finding those professionals that'll listen to you and take you seriously and see the vision, I think is super important as well.
Thank you. Gabby?
Yes, so I wanted to answer this question as well. I've been where you are, like what you're describing. I've been there, and I know one thing that helped me was creating a space for people who also felt the same way. And so just know that what you're feeling is it's not exclusive to just you. Like there are other women out there or other people out there who are probably experiencing the same things. And because of this, like you've been put in a position to create a solution for this problem. And so that may mean that you want to create some type of safe space or brave space for people who are also feeling alone in your department. So know that you have that power to create those spaces for other people. But also with that, I wanted to give you just a quick word of advice as well. I'm echoing everything that everybody has said before me with finding those intentional connections, but also for me, assigning those connections to specific roles in my life has helped me. So for instance, I have a board of curators, and on that board of curators, everybody plays a role. So I have a mentor, I have a coach, and I have a sponsor, and everybody in between. And the differentiation between those three roles is that my mentor, that's the person who I can go to and I can be just completely vulnerable with. I can sit in their office, I can sit on the phone with them, tell them how I'm feeling. But then when I go to my coach, that may be somebody who plays a different role. That's somebody who's holding me accountable. They know my goals, they know the steps I need to take. So they're pushing me to excel in those different endeavors. And then you have your sponsor. Sometimes your sponsor won't always look like you. I'll say that again. Your sponsor won't always look like you, because this is the person who's going to bring your name up in spaces that you have yet to enter. And so your sponsor can be a non-binary person. It can be a male. It can be somebody who is of a different race, religion, whatever, creed. people, right? We just want to bring people into our lives who are serving with intention. And so that's one thing I would tell you, you know, find your board of curators, assign those different roles, because those roles are determined on the amount of energy somebody wants to invest in you. If your coach is going to be your professor, set those intentions ahead of time. This is what I would like to see from this relationship. I would like to have this type of support. Let them know so that it's just not smoke and mirrors and you just giving them a title. Same with your mentor, same with your sponsor. Find those different people to fulfill those roles, but also don't forget your power and know that you can create those same spaces for somebody who thinks just like you.
Yes, thank you. I don't have anybody else hand up to answer, so I'll let another student ask a question. Annabelle.
Yes, hi. I just want to start by thanking all of the panelists who are here for their participation, and you, Professor Aaunterria, for putting this together and allowing our involvement as a class. It's really a tremendous opportunity to be able to share in a space like this. My name's Annabelle. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a less traditional student. I'm 27 and I have 3 kids. And I returned to school because I know that I want to teach in higher ed. I'm a creative writing concentration with a minor in women's and gender studies. And it seems like a timely opportunity for me to ask my question because I was concerned about allyship in academia, specifically as it relates to white faculty and students practicing allyship toward Black female identifying people, Black non-binary people, Black queer folks, and Black trans people in academia. So those are, you know, just trying to take this intersectional and interdisciplinary approach to an area that I know as a creative writing major, I'm going to be in predominantly white spaces and predominantly male spaces. And I attend a predominantly white university currently as a CSU student, also a land grant university. And I realize that my presence as a white woman is inherently violent often. So I just wanted that perspective on white people practicing allyship in academia. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to answer for her? Oh, I got hands flying up. Corey.
Sorry. I actually, if I could just share a story going off of that question. In spaces, so I work at CSU and UNC, but at CSU, allyship happens in ways that are very problematic and dangerous and violent, very performative. I see that a lot. So we were kind of talking about the language, right? You learn the jargon, you learn all the big fancy words. And so we have white people who are going around saying these really flashy, cute things, right? Talking about anti-Blackness, trying to, perform allyship. And we have to be really careful about that. To me, allyship means in these spaces, not taking up too much space, not taking up the opportunities. And so I'd like to just share a story as kind of a warning for white folks and how you should be kind of keeping an eye out, especially on other white people and kind of checking the behavior, because for those of us who are actually impacted by it, we don't have the same power that you have in being able to kind of check those types of violence that are coming up. So there was a white woman that was in the bachelor's program. I was in the master's program of the same department. I won't necessarily name off names just to kind of protect privacy as much as possible. But this person ended up being, I ended up teaching a class for a mentor of mine. So a part of being, who we are in these spaces is illness is a big part of our experiences. Many of us, especially at CSU, so many people of color fall ill and end up needing to leave and take space and get the hell out of there. You hear that a lot, right? I had to leave this environment because it's so toxic and damaging. So one of my native professors had to leave, so I took over her class for her. First of all, being in our position, there's that animosity, that tension with white students. They already know, in this case, there was a white TA, a woman. They already feel comfortable with her, and either way, she, as the white woman, is going to be seen as, again, that gatekeeper of knowledge. She's going to be seen as more competent, intelligent, etc. So with that being said, I had students who were kind of going and deferring to that person rather than deferring to me when they needed things, when they needed support, that kind of thing. And she weaponized her position in a way that could have cost me my job. So someone needed to turn an assignment. They didn't reach out to me. They reached out to this person. And the person calls me Sunday morning, 8 a.m. I'm in bed. I'm trying to relax and enjoy my Sunday. We don't get paid enough for working on the weekends. So, you know, I'm taking my time, reclaiming my time. And she emails the student and says something really inappropriate about how, you know, I don't know how this professor is going to, and this is someone who knows me, by the way, and we did have a personal relationship. I don't know how this person's going to respond to you. I just want you to know that I'm your greatest ally. If we need to, we can go to the dean's office. We can go and engage in these processes, right? Again, the same processes I was just talking about where we have to then defend our job, right? And protect our job. So I go to the person whose class it was, I go to my boss and I let them know, I say, hey, would you mind facilitating, you know, accountability is love. Would you mind facilitating some type of an accountability process so we can work through this and move forward? We're working together. We're in the same community, right? We're in the same spaces. Completely ignored my emails about connecting. And now this person just got hired as a faculty in one of our departments, but they have an extensive, I'm merely one person, but they have an extensive history of violence against Black women in particular, and then queer Black folks especially. And there's been no accountability, and now they're in a position of power, which they were already dangerous before. Now, you know, think about how that positions our students. So that's something to be really careful about. People can throw around the words, they can know what the hell they're talking about, but that really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. We need to look at the pattern of behavior and how people are actually showing up, and listen to Black women, right? When they're sitting here saying, hey, you know, if 10 Black women are coming and saying, hey, this one person is abusing me, maybe don't say that all of those 10 Black women are the ones who are incorrect, right? And just not knowledgeable, because that gaslighting was another part of that experience. So I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you for that. LaKendra?
Yes, I also want to say that I'm reading the messages in the chat, and you know, I just don't want to miss nothing that anybody else is saying, trying to respond, but I feel a lot of the comments. I'm digging it. But one of the things that I noticed, and I want to agree with, you know, Gabby, you know, for my PhD dissertation, I have to have a committee of, you know, 5 people. And, you know, my 5 people could not be more diverse. The chair of my committee is a white man, you know, and I chose him because, you know, from the very first class that I took with him, you know, he didn't, you know, do this thing where he taught the class. You know, he was, you know, intersectional about it without making these big grand gestures. He gave it to you how it was. He didn't center himself. He didn't, if you shut your eyes, you wouldn't have known, you know, that, you know, who he was, because he just gave it to you like it was. This was a course on slavery, and he gave it to you exactly how it was and as real as it could get. And, you know, that's why I chose him as the chair of my committee, you know. And when you come into these spaces, you know, I took women and gender studies classes for a year. I feel that anybody teaching a women and gender studies class should be an ally. I don't think this should be in question. I don't see how you can call yourself a feminist on any level without, you know, I don't think you should have to say you're an ally. I think you should be that. I don't think you should talk about the importance of being intersectional. I think you should do that. These are not things that need to be said. And if you're going to teach these kind of courses, this is where it needs to go. But what I found with a lot of the classes on women and gender studies that I took is, one, they failed to hold white women accountable for their role in, you know, white supremacy, in institutionalized racism, in white violence. And they failed to hold them accountable for the ways in which their actions and their role in society exacerbated the circumstances for many marginalized women and continues to do so. Okay? You can't be an ally at any given point when your discourse likens the struggles of the oppressed with the oppressor. You can't be an ally and go around and do these kind of things, not in my opinion. You know, it doesn't feel genuine, you know, when we're doing this, we're all the same, we're all marginalized, you know, together, because we know for a fact that this is not always the case. I don't need a grand gesture. I need you to be intersectional. Just be it. You know, I don't need you to write in the beginning of your book, my goal is to be inclusive. Just be inclusive. You get what I'm saying? And these works of literature that I'm being forced to read right now often fail to do that. You know, and I was in a class, a feminist class, a women and gender studies class, being taught at the 500 level. This person should be an ally, you know, but I was forced to read a book that, you know, was not intersectional, even though it said several times that it was. So I'm like, I done marked it down on page 67. This person has said their goal is to do this, that, and the third. Now, even if you're not going to do it, don't say it's your goal and then go left, because I have a problem at this point. And then it's me always making everything about race when I should be in a feminist space. You get what I'm saying? And so when I address this professor, I'm literally taking this class right now. He asked me, you know, because he could see that I was upset. Well, would you have a problem if this book said it was just about white women? Absolutely not, because that's what it's about. That's exactly what the hell it's about. Call it what it is. And don't you dare, you know, call this intersectionality. And please don't invoke the name of Paulo Freire and involve him in your madness, because I said earlier that I love him. Don't do that. Don't say that your book is inspired by how Paulo Freire thought that marginalized people should be taught, because you're damn right. You know, so like I'm saying these things in a space that should be just inclusive. And there's a problem. And this very guy, you know, the class, there are other Black people there. And in these instances, often nobody gets your back. They're a deer in headlights. You know, they don't really have anything to say. And so at one point, you know, I end up having to ask the class, because I was confused. I asked the professor, and this is the question where I determined, because another one of these questions asks, how do you know if you're in a safe space? This is what told me in this class that I wasn't. So now I just sit there and let the foolishness play out. I asked my professor and everybody else in the class, you know, I think there's a disconnect here, and I think I know why. Do you think that classism, sexism, you know, homophobia, any of these things, white supremacy, institutionalized racism, do you think that these things can coexist with benevolence? You know, y'all, this fool said, yeah. That's when I was done. And this is a women and gender studies class. So this is women and gender studies. We should not be having this conversation. Last semester, I was in a class with a lot of non-binary people, you know, and to this professor's credit, she really did try, but she failed so poorly to be an ally. And I ended up feeling the sting of it as well. You know, at what point should the non-binary, trans, and queer people in the class have to essentially push the teacher aside and say, let us break it down for you? At what point should they be pushing you aside, doing your job, and telling you as the professor that should know better, that should come into this space as an ally, no questions about it, giving these people material that's offensive, you know, and this is where, you know, I was inspired by, you know, all of the queer community, because, you know, they call you out at a level that, honey, I was clutching my pearls. I was like, oh, you saying that? Because I know what's going to happen when I say something. I'm going to be the problem student that makes everything about race, because I made everything about race, right? It was me. I have that power to make everything about race. You know, the queer students, the non-binary people, the trans people, they don't give a fuck. They was like, look, they ate that woman alive. You know, you just don't want to be in a situation where you come into class and you have to find out that the students have done your job for you, that you've presented them with material that claims to be intersectional, that is not. You don't want to be in a position where you have to say you are an ally. That shit should be evident from the get-go. Anytime you're in a room with marginalized people, and as to where, bad things happen to white women, hold them accountable for all the shit that they did. Because you was right there holding the segregation picket line. You was right there grinning when Negroes were being lynched. You was right there in the picture. Post up. You were out here getting Black men killed. Yeah, so that's my take on that.
Thank you. Tiya.
So, like I said earlier, I don't even really love the word, but I do understand the sentiment. So I'm going to put the semantics to the side. In my most humble of opinions, in order to be a true, quote, ally and to support people, you have to actually be engaging with these people in other times other than when you're speaking up for their rights. There's no way that you can speak about my rights or what it is that you think that I need if you don't know me. And it's not like, and that's why allyship always comes across as performative, because it's people who are whiter than snow and have a group of lily white friends and exist in completely lily white spaces, and then come over here and try to say something about anti-Blackness. You are the definition of anti-Blackness because you've never been around a Black person in your life out of choice. Like I cannot stand up for somebody that you avoid. You can't stand up for people with disabilities if you always shunning people with disabilities to the side and you don't want to engage with them and you don't want to accommodate for them. You can't stand up for sexuality and gender orientation if you are not actually actively engaging yourself with this community. And you don't have to go, quote, out of the way to do it anymore because it's 2021. We got the internet. It's a million different ways to connect to people all over the world. It's really no excuse to only have one type of people in your circle. And I think that honestly and truthfully, as you diversify your group, as you diversify your friends, you're not even going to have to worry about being an ally, because what's going to happen naturally is you're going to have empathy for people that look like people that you care about. If all you surround yourself is with white people, then those are the only people that you're going to be able to show compassion for, that you're going to be able to show caring for. And again, yes, you can try, but it's not going to be genuine. And the problem with allyship is performative as hell. This summer, it was so draining. It was so draining. I'm also a burlesque dancer when I'm not being a therapist. I haven't really been doing that lately because it's a panini outside, but when it's not, I do that as well. And one of the interesting things that happened in the burlesque community is I'm in an all Black burlesque group, and they were like giving us money, like just giving us money for no reason. And it was great, because we spent the money on things that we needed. Of course, as Black women, we don't have access to as much money as other people do, and costumes are expensive, especially the good rhinestones. But it was very weird and it felt very forced. And me and our group, we sat for weeks just kind of trying to talk about it and process it and figure out how to accept it. Now, we was not going to turn monies away because we don't have dollars, so we had to get it together. But it was very difficult and it felt very forced. And so I say all of that to say, like, if you gonna be with it, be with it. Like, you can't be talking about you an ally and you ain't got no Black friends. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. You can't say that you're an ally for trans people and gay rights if you don't have no trans friends. I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. You can't say that you're standing up for women's rights and all you surround yourself with is men. I just don't believe you.
Can I just bounce off of that? Because that was part of what I was going to say. I don't know if my hand was up after yours, Gabby, so apologies if I'm interrupting the line. But I wanted to kind of take that and also pull it into the academic space, right? Because I am 100% in agreement. Like, you can't if you don't understand the spaces that you're trying to stand up for and you're trying to speak for, then we're going to have some issues. And know boundaries and understand that you can't just walk in the back, because that space is sacred to folks, and there are opportunities and spaces where you are welcome to come and learn, and don't just interrupt spaces, because that inherently is violent. Because when you go and interrupt spaces, when you go and just you being there, even if you don't sit, even if you don't say anything, even if you're not doing anything, it's interrupting the space, and it's interrupting the kind of sacredness that took so long to build. And so I'm thinking about academia specifically, right? And I worked for BAC for a long time, and I have a lot of family and love there. And I'm thinking about how many people that came before me fought to make that space what it was. We were in a basement in Johnson Hall for years because they didn't want to give Black people money to thrive on our campus. And so walking into BAC as a white person, even if you're there with the intention, it's violent. And so I think I'm very adamant, like I said, about you. I don't think you can call yourself an ally. And I raised my hand really quickly, and I was like, why am I feeling some sort of way? I'm like, why? Let me reflect on this emotion right now, because I think the word trigger, it's used a lot, but I was very triggered by your question, because for the 4.5-ish, whatever years I was at CSU, the amount of white women that said, Marcela, can you please tell me how to be an ally? And I'm saying you, and I'm not referencing you, I'm referencing you. And I appreciate your question, especially in this space of learning, because it's very difficult. And so it's just really being aware of the space that people can take up in whatever different privileged identities you hold, because I have to do that too. I have to check myself in spaces. Everybody has to check their own privileges in different spaces. That's important. And it's time and place. It's time and place. And specifically for academia, the last thing I wanted to really bring up is do not use Black students for your credibility. The amount of time and energy I gave to white women on CSU's campus to make them more credible, and I didn't get paid in monies, paid in any, we don't do that anymore. Do not use Black people to make yourself more credible. Do not use Black people to seem diverse. Like, no. Like, I got asked to moderate a panel last week at USC, and they were like, hey, Marcela, like, you asked about blah, 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 blah. Would you mind moderating this panel? I said, we need to chat on the phone first, because I'm not just going to sit up here and let you wave me around like, oh, look at our Black person, they're moderating our Black panel. That's not going to happen. It actually ended up being really great, and I was able to kind of lead the panel and moderate in whatever way I saw fit and all the things, and was given the space to be creative, given the space to give my opinions, to play the music I wanted to play, to do all the things. But at CSU, I was not often given that opportunity. It was, oh, here's this opportunity wrapped up as me putting you on a stage to tokenize you. I actually got a student last week who DM'd me on Instagram and was like, hey, I am a transfer student applying to CSU, and I just saw you in a video. Can you tell me about your experience there? And it was really strange. And I like had this reflection of, oh my God, CSU is still using my face after all the work that I put in and called their asses all out a year ago now on all the bullshit that they did. Y'all are still gonna use my face and not give me any sort of compensation for that energy? I'm done with it. The legal ramifications that I'm considering are for another conversation, and probably shouldn't have said that on a recording, but LOL. But I think that, especially in academia, there's a way to be an ally and to be there to support students of all different backgrounds, one, without saying or using them for their energy and saying you're an ally when I don't think anybody can say they're an ally. Like, I think everybody needs to be learning how to support communities better. And I think that's the language. Academia is inherent, and this is, I guess, faulty, right? Because white academia and what academia has become is very different than what academia should be, in the sense of groups of people coming together to learn, groups of people coming together to be critical, groups of people coming together to better the different communities that they're coming from and want to be in. And so I just wanted to kind of recenter all that with academia, because there are so many times where I've been brought into super toxic spaces. And Mick asked me to connect to Aaunterria about this panel. I was like, I want to do another panel for CSU. And Mick was like, chill, bro, chill. I was like, I don't want to go talk to these students and pretend. And she's like, chill. She's cool. It's all right. And so just really thinking about the energy that you're asking of folks and the energy that you're putting into folks and the presence and space that you're taking up, whether it's intentional or not.
Thank you. Gabby?
Yes, this question triggered me because I've been dealing with this all week. Let me put my hand down before I forget, y'all. Hold on. Okay, anyway. So this has triggered me because this is what I find with allyship. To me, people see it as a way to decorate themselves, whether it's professionally on their resume or just to parade around and say that, look at me, this is what I care about, this is what I'm doing. To me, that's problematic, because if my life was on the line and I needed open heart surgery, I would not call a nail tech to perform the surgery. That's how absurd it is to me, because you have one set of skills and you say you want to support me, you want to be an ally, but you don't have the credibility to be one. You haven't done the work. And I'm not directing this at the person that asked this question. Please don't take this personal. But people like that, they haven't done the work to be the ally. Just like everybody has said, your circle needs to reflect whatever allyship that you're trying to claim, right? So my thing is, don't decorate yourself in allyship. Be about that action. Because when you come to me and you ask me, how can I support you? I'm gonna need you to have some power about it. I'm not about to vent to you if you have no power to change my situation. At this point, it's just gossip. It's not a productive conversation for me. So when I say this triggered me, is because also what I see, just working in higher ed, is oftentimes people want to be allies, but they don't know who they are themselves. And when you when you do your job well, because you have done the work, and you operate in spaces that uplift, underrepresented students and things like that, that can be seen as a threat by your coworkers who do not look like you. And rather than meeting you on that level and trying to support you in that way, they see you as a threat. So then they try to minimize you. They try to separate you. They try to perform that violence that I forget somebody was talking about earlier. And for me, that's triggering, because I've done all this work to be competent in my role, but when I do it, I'm still pigeonholed. For instance, me, obviously, I'm a Black woman. Like I said earlier, I serve as the director of student life. For me, my role is a mainstream role. I'm not the Black director of student life. I'm not the multicultural director of student life. I'm the director of student life. And so, and I am sent students who typically only look like me. For me, that's a problem, because I'm like, what are these other students who have these other intersections? How are they being supported? If you're sending them to the underrepresented person on campus, I don't have an ally. I don't have an allyship on campus. So you're sending them to me. And then when I bring up these issues, because I don't have an advocate in these meetings, I'm bringing up their issues and nothing is being done about it. So it's just a revolving door of violence, and there's no follow-up, there's no follow-through. And so the type of conversations I have, whether they're received or not, I'm always saying, I serve in a mainstream role. This is a traditional role, and I won't be pigeonholed into doing the Black girl job, essentially, because people have made comments like, hey, I really appreciate you for connecting with students who are more difficult to talk to or connect with. And for me, that's a microaggression, because I know what you mean by that, right? So I always say, let me do my job from a mainstream role, whether I was the director or the coordinator, whoever. I'm going to always advocate for people in general. But also, of course, I have empathy towards the underrepresented students. Of course, I have empathy for them. But my thing is, don't pigeonhole my role that is supposed to serve the entire campus to just doing that type of work, because that's what I look like. Because I feel like if a student experiences racism, they should be able to go to coworker, my supervisor, anybody on campus. So that's my issue with allyship. People use it as a decoration. They don't use it as a moment to actually educate themselves and to actually immerse themselves in people's pain and people's experiences. One last example before I go. One thing I have, switched around. I came into my position doing diversity talks or diversity trainings. And I had an epiphany one year, and I said, literally, I don't want to do this anymore, because people will come and they say, oh, I did it, or we'll give a certificate. Oh, got my certificate. I'm about that action. I'm down for the people. And I'm like, but you're not though, because you're still performing violence towards me. So what I have done, I've switched up the narrative. Oh, we're teaching emotional intelligence, because you can't talk to me about being my ally unless you have emotional intelligence. You cannot you can't empathize with my experience unless you know my experience. And so before I teach you all these terms and these terminologies and things like this, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, and you're going to pay me. Just like that. So yes, that is my take. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Atiya?
So I'd like to say that kind of going off of Gabby's emotional intelligence, yes, just keep an open mind and try to keep an understanding to try to get to know the Black community. I think that's your good way to go ahead and try to navigate those alliances. That's that's the advice I got for you, just to keep an open mind and try to understand us.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and defer back to students if somebody else has another question they would like to present today. Oh, got 3 hands up. Okay, I'll start with Natalia, because I saw your hand go up first, and then I will do Emma and then Ben.
Hi everybody, my name is Natalia, she, her, hers. And my question kind of touched a little bit on what Angel asked earlier, but my question for y'all is, how do you protect your joy, or in moments when you feel your joy is under attack, what do you do to protect it and ensure it?
Tiya?
To the best of my ability, I don't engage in spaces that seem like they're gonna zap my joy. Like if I feel like it's going up, oops, this is done. Walking away. Don't care how much money it is, don't care what's going on. In terms of academia, I know that can be a little bit more difficult, like with the program I'm in right now, I don't get to choose my teachers. I get to choose my committee for my dissertation, but I don't get to choose, my professors, because we're all going through the same class program. But like I know back when I was in graduate school, I would, once I decided, oh, I fucks with this professor, oh, now I'm taking all of the classes that they teach, and I'm just going to kind of stay there so that I don't even have to deal with, this other stuff over here. Like, no. And that goes for my social media too. Like I've gotten to this place to where if you come up on my social media and I make a face or I feel uncomfortable, unfollow, delete, don't care who you are, family member, relative, teacher, networking, don't care. You gotta go. All I have is me. I'm the only thing that can protect my space. I am not allowing anything into my space that does not bring me joy and awesomeness. Like, and it's just straight like.
Thank you. Micaela?
Well, I have a lot of free time now, so I've been trying to meditate a lot more, kind of get used to I don't know, elevating my spiritual self as well as my physical self. Because as we were saying earlier, my whole I was just not aligned after I left CSU, and it was just I was like, what am I gonna do? What is life? And so I like spending time by myself already. And so with everything going on, I've just been doing that a lot. And so I've been trying to focus my energy into just developing myself, because I've recognized one of like my toxic qualities is that like I really feel into others when I should be trying to like create healthy boundaries with them and being like, okay, that's enough, and then like helping myself. And so it's definitely been hard because I'm a giver at heart. But I figured out it's okay to say no. It's actually sexy. I love saying no. I love it because I'd be like, no, like I'm not compromising myself for this. So either you're gonna bring a little bit more or you're gonna leave. And I don't know, that's sexy. It's nice living life, like knowing that like I'm a beautiful 23-year-old woman with 2 degrees under my belt and I have an international job. And so it's like now that I know this, my worth is just like elevated to a different level. Like even like the way my family talks to me, like you're not gonna talk to me like that anymore. Like I'm a grown woman. Like so I've been trying to like emulate that worth just in my surroundings, just because I feel like I don't have to reintroduce myself when I just come correct with people. Like this is how you're gonna treat me. This is what we're not gonna do. And so like it's just made my life a lot easier, low key. And just like we were saying before, like I blocked family members. I identify as Afro-Latina, and so like my Mexican family is super anti-Black, and I don't put up with that. And so like I go on these rants. I'd be like, okay, I already blocked 3 of y'all today, and I already told y'all I'm not doing this during Black History Month. So it's like, it just pisses me off because it's like so many things in this world want to steal your joy. And so like, for me, I'm like trying to do like mental gymnastics on like how I can regain it, keep it, emphasize it, you know, just so much to my own energy, just because I feel like I've noticed I feel the most beautiful about myself when I'm feeling into myself and like being kind and healing. And so I've just been focusing on that and living life and being beautiful and enjoying all the beautiful people that I get to surround myself with virtually and in real life. So I'm really that's what I spend my time doing.
Thank you. Corey?
I think Lakendria was actually before me, so I'll go ahead and defer to her.
Okay, go ahead, Lakendria.
Thank you. I think to do history, you have to kind of, especially, you know, African American history, which I do. I think you almost have to be a glutton for punishment. It's very, I spend a lot of time crying and asking why is this so bad? So if you're gonna go into something difficult where you can't avoid the space that tells you that you're inferior, that you're not safe, that you're less than, but there's also these great lessons that Gabbea was talking about. And I prefer, rather than to use the term contribution, Black people actually built this shit. And it's just easier to go ahead and say that. Their bodies served as the collateral put up to build this country. The wealth generated by their bodies sustained it and built the generational wealth that you see everybody around you enjoying today. You know, them fighting on wars that were not in their best interest, you know, literally gave this country its independence. They might not have had it without it, you know. So, you know, there is good lessons to be learned, but I won't say pick something a little bit easier to stomach if you want to stay happy. I think that it makes me happy knowing the truth. There is something, you know, to be said for knowing the truth. It does give you a sense of peace because you feel things your whole life that you don't have any language to describe. Having that language is a sense of peace in itself. And I think that, you know, no longer being oblivious to certain things, it gives me a sense of peace as well. And I think it's important, if you're going to do something this difficult, to read and research. Remind yourself that these things would be happening, how the ways that the past is affecting the future right now as we live it, and all of the things around us that are, you know, self-perpetuating cycles because of these, you know, previous systems of oppression that we've lived through. They're all going to be happening whether you're aware of them or not, you know? So count yourself lucky that you're aware if you have to work, you know, in this realm of things. And, you know, it should make you happy that you're just not a sheep, even if you have to cry a lot. And even if you have to be the person that makes every discussion in class about race a lot, even if you have to leave class with your face hot and tears streaming down your cheeks because you were ganged up on by all the racists in the class while the teacher just looks on confused. You know, I really don't know how I maintain a sense of happy other than to just say, hey, this is what it is. And it was going to be this, whether I knew it or not. And being happy is a choice I make every day. I smile a lot when I'm not crying because my readings they trigger me. Yeah, so just go out there and grab your happiness. And be grateful that you have the knowledge to maybe do something about anything that can make you unhappy. Because white supremacy and racism makes me unhappy. And what I know might help me to do something about it. And that in itself is empowering.
Thank you. Corey?
If I can kind of piggyback off of what was a couple of the things that were being said, I agree that I think it can be absolutely liberating, getting these pieces of knowledge, especially when, especially for Black women, right? I mean, in the Black community, we defer to cis men. In women's spaces, we're deferring to white women. So there's never room to talk about Black women's experiences and kind of dealing with these things in isolation until we kind of are able to come together as community and say, oh, wait, now my experiences kind of make sense. Now I know that I'm not just, with the gaslighting, right? And people are invalidating my experiences, but now I know I absolutely am the kind of authority on my own experiences. I know what I'm going through. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And that can be really liberating. And I think while doing this work, there are other avenues to do this work that I think can also be really fulfilling. Like there's transformative justice, restorative justice, healing justice, where we're talking about, sure, yes, we do have trauma, but we're so much more than this trauma porn. Here's where we kind of go with it. Here's how we heal. Here's how we take care of our bodies in meaningful ways. I think Micaela mentioned meditation. Liberate Meditate is a really great app that caters to people of color, queer folks, folks with disabilities, marginalized folks who tend not to be centered. They're starting to kind of put prices on things, but they do have a lot of free resources. So I think that's a really great resource to check out if that's your kind of thing. And I think rest and care is really important. With that last question, a lot of people were talking about how there's a lot of exploitation of Black women, right? Their time, their energy, their labor. So I actually did a study at CSU looking at women faculty, and it's Black women, women of color, who are doing all of the mentorship, who are doing the work. We have these committees that we have to do to keep the university running. We're doing all of this labor. So taking time to rest and really setting those boundaries around, if you're not going to pay me, if you're not compensating me, if I'm not getting anything out of this, I'm not going to do it. We don't get paid enough for this. We're extremely underpaid in the work that we do. And this is our lives, right? So we don't get to turn that off. I can't remember who said it earlier, but it's like, we're always doing this work. We're always going to have to deal with the repercussions and sit with the trauma of doing this work. We don't get to turn it off. So having those boundaries, removing violent people. I was estranged from my mother for a year because she couldn't check the white supremacy in her own family. And that was really important for me. And I wonder if anyone else feels this way, but I feel like the longer you're in academia, the more we have this kind of internalized capitalism where everything our production is most important. We need to be producing, we need to be working all the time. And that becomes kind of central. And then when you want to bring in, more balance, bring in more creative things that give you joy, that can feel like a task, that can feel like a chore that you're taking on, and it no longer feels joyous. So kind of trying to change our relationships and setting those boundaries around your labor, I think, is a really important part of that.
Thank you. Gabby?
I love that. I love what Corey just shared. Thank you so much, Corey. I would agree, actually. For me, I'm very radical about joy. I feel that literally the makeup of who I am is joy. Literally, my name means the warrior of good news. And so I know that in some seasons of my life, I have to war for that space of joy, but I know that's what I was literally called here to do. That's my purpose. And so I'm very radical about joy. If I feel like I'm not receiving joy in the workplace, I'm going to create it. And for me, another thing that has helped me to, I guess, protect my joy is to find a healthy outlet to vent about things that bring me, sadness or just pain. And for me, that outlet has been therapy. I do work in a very rural white community, and so a Black therapist is not available to me in person. I'm sure I can find one virtually, but in person, I don't have access to that. And so I did step out, on faith, and I just signed up for a therapist. And this therapist happens to have research work in African American studies and women and gender studies. And she's a Christian white woman, and I love her. And so she has been very vital in providing an outlet for me to just vent, because one thing about joy is that, yes, you want to protect your joy, but you also want to protect the joy of people who are in your life. I could not continue going home crying at night, unloading all of my work woes on my fiance, my mom, my friends. I couldn't keep doing that. So with protecting my joy, I had to protect other people's joy, their peace, and I had to find a healthy outlet so that when I go home, I do have joy. I'm not still harping on something somebody sent me an email about at 11 a.m. and it's 9 o'clock and I'm in bed and I can't sleep. So you have to find that balance for yourself. Again, find an outlet, and also be radical about joy. If you know that there is something in your life that you've always wanted to try, go for it, create it for yourself. If you want to center joy for other people, create something. Again, like I said, I'm very underrepresented at my institution. I am the only Black woman, and then there's only one Black male on this campus. And so that doesn't reflect the demographic of my students. And instead of internalizing that pain that I feel when I am microaggressed, I create spaces for them to be celebrated. And so, literally, Women's History Month is about to be lit, okay? Because just like Black History Month was lit, just like Hispanic Heritage Month is lit, Pacific Islander Month is lit. Like I said, I'm in a mainstream position, and yes, I know I serve the entire campus, and that's what I'm going to do. But also, intersectionality and diversity will never fall by the wayside with me, no matter what role I'm in. That's how I create joy. Let me celebrate you, because that's literally what I was brought here to do. So instead of letting people's foolishness minimize me and dim my light, I shine so bright to the point where your eyes hurt, and you just have to bring your ass over here and join the party.
I love you. Like, you just regular. Oh, you made me laugh. Atiya, I saw that you had your hand up, and then I will defer to Emma for the last question of the day before we close up.
I like to say that self-care is very important. Whatever you choose to have, self-care is definitely the best choice to go ahead and help with navigating issues and trying to figure out the process that you would use to get through situations. For me, I have to take a beat. Being a community health worker, it can be a struggle dealing with emotions. So I take a beat. If I can't handle a situation, I step back. And then I reiterate which ways I can actually navigate the situation. So taking a beat, meditation, self-care. For me, self-care looks like driving, listen to music. I love to drive and listen to music, or vacations. I have a vacation coming up, so self-care for me. So thank you.
Thank you. I think I am unmuted. Okay. And then Emma, I know that you have a question. I think this is the only day you're attending, so I'll let you take us out with your question.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Emma. Pronouns are she, her, hers. Thank you all, as the other students have said, thank you all for being here. This has been super awesome for me to be able to be a part of. And I know we don't have much time, but I want to ask quickly, kind of going off of the previous conversation, how do you show up as your authentic self in terms of personal expression in your respective fields or in academia? Thank you.
Let's see, Tiya?
I think this is probably my favorite question because my whole entire identity and existence is about being my authentic self. Um, Being able to have your own private practice is dope, bruh. I say whatever the fuck I want. I do whatever I want. You not gonna fire me. You can't check me. It's nothing you can do about it. I will go to work with my makeup like this. I will wear pink fucking highlighter. I will wear glitter. I will wear unicorn sneakers. I will wear black is proud. I don't care. I wear whatever I want. I do whatever I want. I talk to my clients like how I'm talking to you guys. They eat snacks in my office. Sometimes we have lunch together. It's a grand old it's just a grand old time. I don't worry about trying to switch up my language and things like that. Like I just try to be myself, and I do understand that comes from a place of privilege a little bit because I work for myself. So like my number one joke is, who's gonna fire me? Like I'm a pole dancer too, and like people always like, oh, you know, your side note, sex work is work, love it, don't care. But people will say stuff about that, and I'll literally be like, who is gonna fire me? Oh, me? No, I don't plan on firing me today. So this is what you get. This is what you get.
Thank you. Marcela?
I'll be super quick so I can be respectful of folks' time, but inherently I have like a lot of emotional conflict as I continue to work in higher education, right? It's a space that has caused me a lot of trauma, a space that has caused me a lot of pain, and I have confidence in the work that I'm doing to potentially make that space better for the people who come after me. That's just a bit of my why, and that's what holds me accountable. If I'm ever doing something and I don't know why I'm doing it, I'm like, is it part of your why? Being grounded in who you are and being grounded in your purpose is the best way to stay authentic. And that takes a lot of time. And I can't say that I knew my purpose and my why until recently. And so it's been an exciting journey. And so I think once you can find your purpose, once you can find your why, once you know who you are, it comes very naturally to stay authentic and to show up in spaces as you. So that's just my little 2 cents.
Thank you. And then Gabby, your last hand up, so you're gonna send us out here.
Oh, no pressure. No. How do I, show up as my authentic self? This is something I honestly have to say I struggled with the first 2 years being in this role. And I would say the light bulb for me was just remembering that the person I am in the interview, the person I am from my 9-to-5 job, and the person who I am after 5 at 5:01 at home with my people, those should not be 3 separate people. They just shouldn't be, because it was causing me too much emotional stress and it was toxic, it was taxing. And so the epiphany for me was that I lose nothing by showing up as myself, because literally what you need is me. And I say that in the most humble way, but because my walk, my journey, my experience, my decorum, like just everything about me, like how I show up is literally glitter, and you want a piece of it. And I had to own that. And that's why I own every space that I walk in now, because like I said earlier, I did go to an HBCU and I was celebrated in that way. And, the wild card was not that, oh, I'm the only Black person in the room. It's like, that's a plus, but also I bring all these other things with me. It taught me how to be competitive while also valuing myself and my own identity. And so I had to go back to that, and I had to reclaim that. And that's why I operate in the space that I'm in now, because if I'm not celebrated, if I'm not meant to be in that space, then I know that another door will open up for me. And I know that I'm gonna be good regardless wherever I'm at. So also with that, continue showing up as your authentic self, but also make sure you're creating an avenue to where if you do need to exit a profession, that you have that you have that path to do that. This is why you see so many Black female entrepreneurs leading the industry in entrepreneurship, because they're leaving their 9-to-5s to create their own professional spaces. Just like T was saying, who gonna check me? you see this happening so much because we're waking up and we're saying, oh, we can create whatever space we want. So continue showing up as yourself in your profession, wherever that may be, whether it's in school, but also don't forget to create your exit plan or your strategy so that when that time comes, you can still give that same power, that same knowledge, and that same joy.
All right, that's our time for today. And thank you all for showing up and for, you know, sharing your experiences and all of that and really engaging with the questions. And I really also appreciate students for asking such good questions and, you know, being helpful with this. So I know some of you will be attending the panel for next week, students and returning panelists. So I'm excited to do this again next Friday from 12 to 2 Mountain Standard Time. But other than that, thank you all for your time and your stories and all of that. And I love seeing your faces. I'm so excited about this space and that everything works out. I appreciate y'all, and I will talk to you all, I'm sure, pretty soon. So have a good day, because I know some of y'all are getting off to class and things and doing other things, but I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Okay, I just wanted to stay on really quick and see if you needed anything else before I got off.
No, and thank you for putting those in the chat, and they were just like so hype on talking that like I didn't even get to interject with questions. So so yeah,
I know, I was like, it went so smooth.
But yeah, I was just hyped that people were ready to answer questions and that students would have their stuff ready. So I had to do very little. I'm always hyped about that.
That always makes it easy. Yes. Sweet. Okay. Well then, yeah, of course, no problem. And then yeah, I guess I'll see you next week then.
Yeah, and I will follow up and send you another copy of the plans, like my master organizer, because I do have a few more bios that are coming on there, and we did have some extra panelists that are coming on Thursday that were not originally listed. Or sorry, not Thursday, next Friday.
Okay, sweet, sounds good.
All right,
okay, perfect.
I'll follow up with that information hopefully like later this weekend.
Okay, awesome, sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Alrighty. Yeah, bye.
Yeah.